What if I was to tell you that there's a clear difference between strength training and hypertrophy, so expanding the size of your muscle? Would you be interested in knowing what those differences are? If so, I'm going to share with you some insight that digs a little deeper than just simply creating a stimulus for muscle growth. So this podcast is for those who are struggling and need a little bit of insight into the difference between strength and hypertrophy, and need some concise information just to glue that knowledge together and have that clear understanding. And I just need to clarify something before we carry on any further, is that it's not exactly black and white. They are separate processes, but there's a lot of overlap between the two, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Pardon the interruption, just a quick note is that if you prefer content that's a little bit more shorter, concise, more well structured, fewer rambles, fewer tangents, fewer analogies, then there's a link in the description below to another video of mine talking about this subject, but in that manner. You're likely to get less context, but it's more straightforward and to the point, just to let you know. So I'm Simon from the Deep South podcast, and here we talk about fat loss, muscle building, and mindset that glues it all together. All three of those subjects are a massive passion of mine. Hopefully I can share that with you today. And on this podcast, we talk about all these different issues surrounding those three things. More information about me and the channel are in the description below. If you'd like to contribute towards helping the channel grow, then the usual awkward stuff of thumbs up or like, subscribe or follow. And if you find this interesting and you have anything to say yourself, then please leave a comment below. And that gets rid of all the awkward stuff, and now back onto the content. With things like weight loss and stuff, I always find that there's confusion out there. People never really know what to do. With strength versus hypertrophy, I don't really feel that's the case. I just feel as though there's not absolute clarity. It's sort of there or thereabouts. But what I'm going to attempt to do today is to just try and pull it all together and try to explain my understanding of it. And hopefully that'll contribute to you in some way. So we'll kick off with skeletal muscle fibers, and that when we train them, they just tend to get larger. And that's the nuts and bolts of it, really. The same as the heart. When you train yourself and your respiratory cardiovascular system improves, generally the heart becomes bigger, the left ventricle actually, and it gets stronger, more able to pump blood through the heart. The stroke volume increases in its capacity, so therefore the heart has to work less, but the same output results. That's because the muscle has grown in size and therefore the capacity, and it's no different when we weight train, is that the muscle generally, when we want hypertrophy, gets larger. The cross-sectional area, the microfibrils within the muscle, myosin and actin, they all get larger, and therefore the capacity, and that's the important word today, is the capacity of the muscle increases. Then as you'll see later on, it's what we do with that capacity that influences our strength. Intrigued yet? I certainly am, and I know it's coming. It's a fantastic subject to talk about. I really love it to bits, and I could talk about this all day long, but I'm conscious and respectful of your time, so I'll try and rattle on a little bit faster. And we couldn't just move past the fact that newbies in the gym, young and old, newbies, whether you're starting from a young age or you're starting from an older age, if you're starting, then you're in a fantastic position to really rapidly grow your strength. The way in which the motor neurons are grown, the pathways, the mind-muscle connection develops is rapid, and you'll grow the number of weights. That's a terrible phrase. Grow the number of weights. You will see a rapid increase in the amount of resistance that you can shift. I think that's a better way of saying it. Because of the fact that you're new to the gym and your body is ready to rock and roll, ready to adapt in a flash. And it's an exciting time to be you, really. Not quite so exciting to be me, but I manage. So, training for size. This is otherwise known as hypertrophy, or what is it? Hypertrophy, or something like that. I've heard of a number of Americans say that. I can't quite manage it myself, so I'll just stick with hypertrophy. It's like you're getting a trophy in hyper mode. Leave it like that, I think. So hypertrophy is where you increase the size and therefore the capacity of the muscle. And this is simply done by creating more muscle tissue. You don't, your muscles do, and all the mechanisms involved in that are vast and complicated. They create more of what you currently have in order to give you an increased capacity to move more weight. And that's the exciting stuff. But the interesting thing is that there's also another type of hypertrophy, hypertrophy, and that is sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. And that is simply where you have more fluid coming into your muscle. And that fluid, of course, doesn't contribute towards the force output of the muscle or its ability to increase the amount of force out of a muscle. It simply increases the size of the muscle. You know, when you get a muscle pump and you're like, yeah, this is great workout today, then you've got a lot of fluid coming in, a lot of blood, and it feels good. You feel larger, you feel tighter, you feel bigger, like you've experienced short-term hypertrophy. And that is what happens to the muscle longer term, is that you get two types of hypertrophy occurring. Interestingly, this whole hypertrophy where we have fluid coming into a muscle presents an interesting scenario, if you like. You'd look at this person, you'd go, geez, how do they get so big, so full, so rounded, so tight? He or she looks amazing, and they've experienced hypertrophy, but they're not very strong. And the reason behind that is because that fluid that they've got doesn't contribute towards that outcome. It just makes them look a certain way. So that is why you can have, well, one of the reasons why you can have someone looking like they're the Incredible Hulk, for example, or She-Hulk. I think that's a thing on Marvel, Disney Plus. If you're looking any kind of hulkish appearance, then your strength doesn't reflect that. It's probably because you've got a lot of fluid within your muscles. So yes, hypertrophy comes in two different forms. One is actual increase of your muscle cells or fibers, cross-sectional area, your capacity to produce force increases, and the fluid rushing in to your system, staying there. Those are two different types, and you often experience a bit of both, not just one or the other. And this hypertrophy is generally created through the use of isolation exercises. So, for example, bicep curl, tricep push down, rather than a squat or a deadlift, which uses multiple joints and multiple muscle groups at one time, because you're targeting various areas a little bit more with isolation exercises. Although I don't like the term isolation exercises because it implies that only one muscle group ever works, but yet we have other muscle groups coming in, fixating joints to make the movement possible, and synergists which help out a little bit, often when we get quite tired. So during a movement, we never really isolate a muscle. We don't even isolate a muscle group. So, don't like that term, but for simplicity, we'll keep it. So isolation exercises are used compared to compound movements, which are more strength related. That's an interesting point in itself. And higher reps, that's a whole other subject matter, but generally hypertrophy is the higher end and muscle strength is the lower end. There's no cutoff, there's no set number. I want to make that really crystal clear. I'll even say it again for you. There's no cutoff number. It's just kind of how you feel on the day and what's right for you. Bunch of different variables. I'll probably make a video on that now. I've sort of motivated myself to do that by mentioning it and realizing the confusion that it could possibly create. We don't want to do that. I'm trying to get rid of the confusion. But anyway, so all of that was hypertrophy. It is the growing of a muscle size. Now let's move on to strength, which is another fantastic, fascinating subject. Don't know which one I like more actually, strength or hypertrophy. It's a interesting one. Leave in the comments below on what your favourite is, because remember, they're different things. Or are there? Bit of a people's eyebrow for you there. To my mate Dwayne, again, one for the wrestling fans. Don't be confused if you don't understand. Let's just get back to talking about strength. So the one big defining difference between strength and hypertrophy is that it is neurological. Involves the nervous system. It's the mind-muscle connection, how efficient the nervous system is at recruiting fibers within the muscle and using them effectively and, dare I say it, economically. Maybe that'll become clearer shortly. And it is achieved, strength is achieved by repeated overload that stresses the muscle out, heavier weights than hypertrophy. And the body has to adapt to those heavy weights, because really the heavy weights are a threat to us. We want to be able to move a heavy weight off us if we need to, or control the heavy weight, because then we are protecting ourselves. So from an evolution point of view, our body always wants to be able to manage a weight. And if it is deemed as being too heavy for us to currently manage with ease, then the body will have to adapt in order to put itself into a position where it is adapted. But if we're smart about it, over years or months of training, we never let it get to that stage. We're always pushing it. So it always has to adapt. And that adaptation process involves creating more neuron pathways, creating or recruiting more motor neurons that are within a muscle. So if you could imagine spaghetti, a bowl of spaghetti, how's that for you? Imagine those spaghetti things are dangling rather than all rolled up in a bunch. And each one of those are muscle fibers. At the beginning, we only recruit a percentage of that bowl of spaghetti to use. We want to create a situation whereby we are utilizing all of the strands of spaghetti, so therefore all of the muscle fibers, so that we can maximize our actual ability to produce a force output. And as time goes on, we will recruit more and more and more muscle fibers, more of those strands of spaghetti. And therefore our ability to produce force, therefore our strength, increases. When it was always there in the first place, we just had to make our mind and our CNS, our central nervous system, actually be able to create a situation where they are using every resource or muscle fibers that are available to them. Hope I haven't confused you with that. Not much anyway. There's always time to put it right if I have, so stick around. So strength is actually created using heavier weight. And it's a heavier weight straight away. So I don't mean when we're lifting 15 reps that we get to rep number 8 and that is when the difficulty kicks in. You think, right, oh, now we go, here we go, last 7 now, away I go, and oh, yeah, that was hard. This is where it needs to be hard from the start, not midway through to the end, and it's hard all throughout. And you really are taxing your body and saying, this is some heavy weight, I need to adapt to it right away. And this is where more rest will be needed in between one set and another. So you can be sure that you are good to go the next time and you can create adequate stimulus. If you're absolutely buggered and you can't sit down, stand up, do whatever, you can't function, listen to people, make logical conclusions of things that people are saying, can't tell the time, can't concentrate, whatever, then you just need a bit more rest, because you need to be able to make the next set productive. Otherwise, kind of wasting your time. And these will be achieved, strength will be achieved mainly through compound exercises, because they're so bloody hard. And that sends some really strong signals to your body of we need to adapt, because that was difficult. And it can't be difficult because then it remains a threat to you. So therefore your body wants to adapt, just like I was saying earlier. But I just want to repeat these things because they're really important, and they're one of the foundations as to how strength training actually works and what you need to do. So the whole strength training thing, so much neurological work that's going in there, like I was saying, all the nerves and stuff and how they develop and they figure out how to use what you currently have. But we also have things like the tendons and various other mechanical features within a muscle that help to make it better. Like tendons, for example, they have to grow stronger. They're pretty resilient things. And muscles can grow very fast, and tendons are kind of resilient and they just sort of keep up with the process. But they themselves will become way stronger and more able to help the muscle with shifting that load as time goes on. Most people that are on performance enhancing drugs at some point tend to rupture tendons and whatnot because their muscles are growing at such a rate that the tendons lag behind and they're not able to keep up with that that force. And then one day a load comes along, the tension is so immense because of the strength of a muscle that ping, away it goes. It's literally like that. It steps and then disappears, shoots up. That's why like some people have smaller biceps, which is quite evident when you look at them. The bicep only comes so far down the arm, it doesn't come all the way down to the elbow or close to it, because the tendon has disappeared up the arm. It's quite a fascinating thing, really. And the biceps are sort of more prone to that. Some people get it in the chest and whatnot. But yeah, it's really quite amazing how it just shoots up the arm and the surgeon's got to try and find it and bring it back down. And sometimes it's contracted so much that it can't, so it has to be attached to a different part of the anatomy and therefore results in a shorter muscle. Just a fascinating tangent or tidbit there for you. It's another reason not to use steroids, just my opinion there. You'll get a short-term benefit out of it, not to mention all the health risks, but there are some major risks involved in becoming so strong so fast. And if we go back to capacity here, is that when you're training for hypertrophy and your muscles are increasing in size, it's also increasing the capacity that you have. And then your neurological system will discover that your muscles are actually stronger and the capacity to produce force is there if they tap into it. And then you do, as part of strength training, is you tap into all of the resources that you have available. If you have a larger muscle, then you can produce a greater force output and therefore your strength increases. And the tendons that I just mentioned play a huge role. If they're there, if they're resilient, well of course they're going to be there, but if they are of a resilient nature and they are connected in all the right places and they're supporting your growth and strength, then that in itself can really provide that torque and that ability to move fast, which is more power related, but it can really improve your strength in that way. And then the muscle fibers themselves. You've got your type 1 muscle fibers, which are more sort of for long duration, like a marathon runner would have type 1. Type 2 are those immense force generation muscles that you would have as a strength training athlete or bodybuilder or strongman, whatever it may be, power lifter. And so if you have a transition from marathon running to weightlifting, you're going to have a period of time whereby your muscles are having to transition, to change and to adapt to what's being asked of them. But if you have always been of a type 2 muscle athlete and you're just asking more of the muscle, then that transition is going to be a little smoother, a little more effective and straightforward, and it'll be a far different experience. So it depends on the type of your anatomy, your muscle fibers, and things such as your tendon. And the last point to mention is that of skill. So if you're strong, then your muscle has the ability to produce force. But the other component of strength is that of skill. And if you're used to performing a certain motion in a certain way, then you will be stronger at doing it, despite how powerful your muscle is or how strong your muscle is. That's another interesting point and a defining feature of hypertrophy versus strength. More on that in a second. Seeing as that second has now passed, let's get into this. So we've got someone with smaller muscles who is stronger than someone with bigger muscles. Surely that can't be right. Surely the person with bigger muscles is stronger every time, right? Well, no, and it's a fascinating subject, just like everything else in health and fitness. Well, I think so anyway. I think I've said that before. And it's as simple as this. Someone who is skillful at performing a certain lift or activity is probably going to be stronger than someone who is theoretically stronger with the big muscles and so forth, even if it's microfibril strength rather than fluid strength. If you remember from earlier, the person with the skill is going to be stronger. Let's think of someone who has experienced a lot of hypertrophy through an incline chest press with dumbbells. They are going to be very strong at doing that particular lift, and they've grown large over the years as a result of doing it as well, perhaps through a combination of reps and sets and so forth. So they're strong and they are big. This is a situation where there's a definite overlap between the two. But then someone comes along and they're smaller and they are immensely experienced and very good and very strong at doing a different type of exercise. Maybe it's a fly, maybe it's a push-up, who knows? And then this other big person comes along and he or she can't match them. And they think, why is that? I'm bigger, I'm stronger than you, but you're just outperforming me in this particular motion. And that is simply because that other person has got a neurological advantage. They have become masters of a certain exercise, a certain skill, just like the bodybuilder has become a master of the incline dump. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. I had something in my throat, and I don't know if I can be bothered to edit that. But this is what happens when you record things like that occur, so why not? But the bodybuilder is just as experienced at doing the dumbbell chest press as the other person is at doing the other exercise, be it a fly or a push-up. So they are stronger at that than the person with bigger muscles. And it is as simple as that. The brain has figured out how to lift this particular load in the most efficient way that it can. The bodybuilder hasn't got to that stage yet. It's like a whole new exercise to them. Different angles, different motions. It's like, oh, what am I doing here? The muscles are there and they can be used, but the brain has not yet figured out how to do it efficiently or effectively. So therefore it can't. And it only has a certain ability to lift a certain amount. So therefore they're not as strong. Fascinating. Another thing to look at is body weight. This particularly occurs on strongmen, from what I've known, is that a lot of strongmen eat so much and they often have beer bellies, and they call them power bellies in that particular discipline or that sport. And the reason why I think they're called power bellies is for this particular reason, is that when the body has a weight that is more proximal, so therefore closer to the middle of the body rather than distal, which is away from the middle of the body, a proximal weight can be moved with ease, and it creates momentum that then filters through or has an effect on the more distal object. And I'm not talking about holding right out here, I'm talking about something that's not in the middle, perhaps a little bit further away. So the beer belly, or the power belly, is easily movable because of how close it is to the middle of the body, and it creates that momentum which affects the object that they're trying to lift. So weight moves weight in that respect. So it just helps out a wee bit. It doesn't actually produce force. It is the muscles that produce the force in the first place that helps create that momentum. Just a little tidbit there, the next time you're watching strongman is that's probably what's occurring. And another factor of strength, and it's often a hidden feature of strength, people don't really look at it as strength. Strength is normally, can that weight be moved? And then the power behind it is how fast can it be moved. But seldomly people think of the technique that is being used and how much strength is being reflected in that technique. So if you have someone who is using a moderate weight rather than, a really, really heavy weight that they can barely lift, but they're using it with such great form, such good technique, the tempo that they are perhaps lowering the weight, if it's a shoulder press or a bicep curl, whatever it might be, the tempo is so controlled. And then the range of motion that they're going through, they really get that stretch before they then move again. All of these things are tremendous reflections of strength that someone has. If you got someone who lifted a weight up and down fairly fast, didn't go through the full range of motion, just did partial repetitions fairly fast because they wanted to use a bigger weight, which is often the case. If you got that person to then improve the technique instantly, and you told them to only move it so fast, at this pace, this is where we concentrate on, this is the motion we're going through, push from here to here, with the stretch, etc. that I've just mentioned, all of that stuff, the eccentric component is emphasized, they wouldn't be able to do half of what they could normally do or do. Normally, I love it when I say do. Then that is because they're not strong enough to do it. And the person that uses the lighter weight with greater form and technique has immense strength to be able to do what they're doing. So it's just a hidden thing there, is that the technique that you use develops the strength and is also a display of that strength. Comes to time under tension as well. And one of the questions that I get a lot, and rightly so, because it's a real massive component of this, is rep range. Like what do you actually do to cover off strength training and or hypertrophy? What do you actually do in the gym? You understand what is what strength is, what hypertrophy is, the nervous system, the fibrils, all that sort of stuff. But in practical senses, when you walk into a gym, what do you actually do to achieve one or the other or both? That's what we'll go through in just a second. So let's start off with the higher rep ranges. So you'll use a more moderate weight for a higher rep range. Could be 15, 20, 25, who knows? But it's the last part of that component the last part of that set that the weight really gets challenging. So therefore progressive overload is still there because you are challenging the body. So therefore it won't really be neurological adaptation as a result of that, but there will be an adaptation for the body to be able to increase its capacity to move more weight. And that is where hypertrophy, the size of a muscle, comes in. That's the adaptation that takes place. However, with lower weights and therefore a higher load, that challenge to the body is not evident part of the way through the set. It's evident straight away. Like you pick the weight up in the first rep, it's like, oh, heavy as. Or if you're Ronnie Coleman, it's a light weight, of course. But in any case, the body has to adapt straight away, and it does so by making a neurological adaptation, which is faster than growing a muscle, because it's a threat. This heavy weight, if this is on top of you, it's going to be hard to lift off you. It's a threat to the body's survival, so therefore it has to adapt in order to make itself stronger so that it can deal with the weight, should this ever occur again, like in the next few days or week. So from that perspective, it's very much a safety mechanism for the body to handle what it's experiencing. So to sum this whole rep range thing up, is that progressive overload, whether it's high reps or low reps, if there's a challenge to the body, then something will change in order to make the body able to deal with that occurrence again. The light weights, the lighter weights, don't present a real challenge, whereas the heavier weights with fewer reps do. So therefore, different types of adaptations occur with the different things that you do. But then the capacity of a muscle is there in order for the neurological system to tap into, to recruit more motor neurons should it need to. So that's the difference between the two and where the two cross over. End. Start. So just as we're finishing off here, contributions. Let's just touch on those and what contributes to what. End. Start. So hypertrophy contributes towards strength, but strength doesn't contribute as much to hypertrophy. Let me explain what I mean by that. End. Start. So hypertrophy expands on the size of a muscle, so therefore its capacity to then deal with whatever it is that it has to deal with. Think of it as its capacity to be as strong as it needs to be. It's a part of strength training. Strength training will tap into that capacity and say, oh yes, I'll use some of that please. I will need that capacity soon because I've been experiencing some severe stress over here. I've been experiencing some extreme weight and I need to be able to be stronger for next time. And oh, you've already got all that muscle there that I haven't tapped into yet. Clearly I need to do that. Don't know why I'm looking over there. It's a blank wall actually. It's not a muscle that's talking to me. So I'll tap into that and I'll use that capacity, use the rest of the spaghetti that's in the bowl from the analogy before, and I will now have an increased ability to produce more of an output of force. And in a situation where strength training is your primary force, or focus, sorry, and you have reached the ceiling of what is available within the muscle, and it still needs to be stronger still, but you're not concentrating on hypertrophy training, you're concentrating on strength training. What does it do? It then creates more capacity and then taps into that capacity. So that is where strength training can contribute towards hypertrophy, but that is fairly rare because the capacity is always there from the muscle for strength training to tap into. The other way around, not so much, because people that are strength trainers, they get so efficient at what they're doing. Their brains, their minds, their central nervous system realizes how to perform movements so smoothly, so energy efficiently, be it technique or balance even. Those things are perfected so much that they don't really often require this capacity in order to achieve the movement against a particular resistance that they need to move. So it can contribute, but I would say it's a very rare circumstance in which it does. So let's wrap it all up, shall we? Hopefully there's not too much confusion going on and I've conveyed this relatively well. But strength and hypertrophy are separate, but there are instances where they both contribute towards one another. Strength training is very much a neurological contribution, and hypertrophy training is very much a physiological contribution of increasing muscle size and getting fluid into the muscle for the two different types of hypertrophy, increasing the capacity that a muscle has. Well, hope that does it for you. Give me a thumbs up if you understand, and give me a thumbs up if you don't understand. See you later.